2024 Spanish horror film _Apocalypse Z, the beginning of the end hits with shocking impact. People infected by the zombie virus become extremely aggressive. The story begins in Galicia, Spain. After Manel's wife passed away in a car accident 2 years ago, he has been living in a small town with only his cat for companionship. That day, the news reports that a virus is spreading worldwide, prompting European countries to close their borders to prevent virus carriers from entering. This virus is proving even harder to fight than COVID-19, and so far, all preventive measures have failed. Manel went to the supermarket to buy some food and daily necessities. He found that the supermarket had already started limiting purchases, and no more than 2 of each product could be purchased. Back home, the Spanish Minister of Health is interviewed, assuring the public that all cases in Spain are under control. Later that night, Manel video chats with his sister, Bolin. She tells him her husband, a member of the military, has been ordered to relocate their family to the Canary Islands, and she advises Manel to get a ticket there too. If the outbreak leads to a lockdown, he'll end up isolated on his own. She's even checked. A flight is available the next day to the Canary Islands. The next day, as Manel drives to the airport, he notices his neighbors loading their cars with bags, clearly preparing to leave. He learns from a radio report that the virus has mutated, drastically altering what scientists understand about it. The incubation period has shortened dramatically. Now, severe symptoms appear within mere minutes of infection. Transmission occurs through blood contact, especially through open wounds and bites. Just as Manel is about to board, all flights at the airport are abruptly grounded, and alarms start blaring on people's phones. The entire city enters a temporary state of alert, and chaos breaks out at the airport. A man, determined to board his flight, rushes through the ticket checkpoint, prompting airport security to chase him down. Manel's phone rings. It's Bolin. She tells him Spain's airspace has been closed. Flights are prohibited due to the terrifying new virus mutation. She urges him to go home, lock himself in, and wait for her next update when she knows more. The man being chased by security was finally caught, but he managed to grab a guard's gun. The airport descends into total chaos, and in the panic, Manel pushes his way out of the crowd. But as Manel drives back home, he gets stuck in traffic on the highway. The radio news is buzzing with discussions about why the president suddenly declared a national state of emergency. Small riots are erupting in several cities across the country. With traffic at a standstill, Manel decides to abandon his car and walk home. He shares his plan with an elderly couple in the car next to him. Manel walks until nightfall before he finally reaches home, only to find that a house on his street has already been sealed off by the military. 2 soldiers are dragging an infected man out of the building. Though he's tightly bound, the infected man still struggles and tries to lunge at anyone nearby. Manel walked closer and realized that the man was his colleague. He never imagined that his colleague would look like this. The next morning, Manel is awakened by a call from Bolin. She quietly tells him the military plans to control the virus by establishing quarantine zones. Though there's significant internal opposition to the plan, the higher the population, the greater the infection rate. Neighboring Belgium has already fallen, so Bolin tells him to stay at home no matter what. The TV news then reports that Munich, Germany, is now completely locked down. Manel also sees scenes of chaos in major cities around the world on his phone. The infected are spreading the virus by biting into others' necks, and some people are already sharing advice on how to defend against their attacks. Just then, both his phone and the TV flash a new warning: to maintain national order and security, Spain has declared a state of emergency nationwide. All commercial activities will cease from 2 p.m. onward, with potential military enforcement of population controls. Manel heads to the supermarket to stock up on supplies again, only to find that the shelves have nearly been cleared out by frantic shoppers. After searching, he finally spots a bag of food on the floor, but just as he grabs it, an old man yanks it from his hands. Looking up, Manel recognizes the man as part of the elderly couple he saw on the highway. Manel grabs a few cans of cat food and leaves the supermarket. He heads to a nearby gas station convenience store and manages to scavenge a few more items. As he exits, a wounded policeman suddenly runs toward him, clearly panicked, and hurries inside the store, locking the door with handcuffs. Before Manel can process what's happening, he hears screaming in the distance. A virus-infected individual tackles a police officer to the ground and begins tearing into his neck. Seeing the policeman struggle and cry out for help, Manel picks up a stick nearby and steps in to assist, but as soon as the infected sees a new target, it abandons the officer and charges at Manel, snarling. Luckily, the officer manages to shoot the infected, saving Manel's life. Before Manel can recover from the shock, He sees that the injured officer inside the store has already turned into one of the infected and is now repeatedly trying to smash through the glass door. Manel tries to approach the officer who saved him, but the officer fires a warning shot, refusing to let him get any closer. After Manel left with his backpack, the police officer pulled the trigger on his own head. Back at home, Manel seals all his doors and windows. On the TV news, the president finally appears and makes a statement, declaring that the virus has spiraled completely out of control worldwide. The government has ordered the evacuation of several densely populated areas along Spain's Mediterranean coast, extending lockdowns for cities with over 400,000 residents. Other heavily populated areas will be relocated to safety zones. The president states that citizens must follow the guidelines issued by local authorities. Any disobedience will be subject to criminal prosecution once the country returns to normalcy. That night, Manel notices that the military has begun arranging evacuations to the safety zones. Drones fly by, blaring warnings through loudspeakers that those who refuse to evacuate will be in violation of national security laws. Remembering his sister's advice, Manel turns off all the lights and pretends no one is home as the military goes door to door enforcing mandatory evacuations. Over the next 2 weeks, the city falls eerily silent, and all internet signals vanish. Manel feels completely cut off from the outside world. His only problem now is that his food supply is nearly depleted. He starts contemplating the idea of venturing out to try his luck. Uncertain of the dangers outside, he follows some basic protection tutorials he had seen online, making improvised armor, and he arms himself with a spear gun before setting out in search of food. Soon, while searching a house, he finds an elderly woman in a wheelchair. Her name is Gabriella. Her family had left her behind and taken a bus out of town, but half an hour later, she found their phones had been turned off. Manel reassures Gabriella, telling her that staying behind may have been safer. Imagine what would happen if an outbreak occurred among the evacuees. Hearing that Manel has checked several houses but come up empty-handed, Gabriella offers to help him. Gabriella points to a few buildings nearby from her window. She'd seen some families stockpiling supplies the day before the evacuation, but they had taken very little with them on the bus, so there should still be food left behind. Following Gabriella's directions, Manel finds supplies here and there, and in a garage, he even discovers a motorcycle. However, after an entire day of searching, he realizes that his food haul is still not enough. Gabriella jokes that, at this rate, if supplies keep dwindling, they'll end up eating each other. Manel suddenly recalls the house of his colleague who was taken away after the airport incident. There might still be food there. While searching, Manel hears footsteps behind him. Startled, he spun around and fired his spear gun, nearly hitting a man, who muttered an apology before running off. As Manel pulled the spear gun off the cabinet door, he discovered that the cabinet was actually full of canned food. A few days later, Manel hears a broadcast on his radio, calling survivors to gather at the docks, where they will be transported to the Canary Islands for refuge exactly where Bullen is located. Manel informed Gabriella over the intercom, but Gabriella didn't really want to go with him. Crowds at the dock could be dangerous, and her wheelchair would make traveling difficult. The next morning, Manel goes to Gabriella's home, only to find she has already taken her own life, leaving behind a note urging him to live on. After tidying up, Manel set off in the direction of the pier, but as he rides through a forest trail, the noise of his motorcycle attracts a horde of zombies, forcing him to speed up. Up ahead, he spots an abandoned survivor camp, and he accelerates to shake off the zombies. But suddenly, a mountain of corpses appears in his path. He loses control and crashes, falling off the bike. As he got up, Manel realized his motorcycle was broken and wouldn't start. As the zombies drew closer, he had no choice but to abandon the motorcycle and run up the mountain. Luckily, the docks are just ahead. He manages to lock himself inside the gate just in time to avoid the pursuing zombies. But when he reaches the dock, he finds that all the boats have already left. His only option is a small inflatable raft, and he drifts off aimlessly into the open sea. That night, a fishing boat spots Manel, and he waves frantically to signal for help. But the people aboard don't seem friendly. They're armed, with cold, hostile looks in their eyes. Neither the captain nor the crew understands Manel's Spanish. The only one who speaks his language is a man named Pritchenko, who translates Manel's words to the captain, Ushakov. After some consideration, Ushakov agrees to let Manel stay, but only if he helps navigate the area as a local guide. Later that night, Manel peers out the porthole and notices a small boat approaching, carrying people desperate for help. But by morning, Those people are nowhere to be found on the fishing boat. Feeling uneasy, Manel suspects something is off. Pritchenko knew something but refused to share it. He simply warned Manel to mind his own business. That night, Manel slipped into the cabin and discovered that the two refugees from the small boat were tied up there. He untied them, but the noise they made while escaping was too loud, catching the guards' attention. In the chaos that follows, one refugee is killed as they try to flee, and Manel finds himself in grave danger as well. Just in time, Pritchenko intervenes, taking down the guard and joining the escape attempt. The three manage to crawl onto a yacht and attempt to escape, but they're discovered by the crew. One of the refugees is shot, and even Pritchenko takes a bullet to his shoulder. Once back on land, Manel brings Pritchenko to a hospital, hoping to find medicine to treat his wound. As he searches, Manel discovers a few survivors hiding out in an operating room. He manages to rescue them after dodging a swarm of zombies pursuing him. Two of the survivors are doctors who manage to treat Pritchenko's wound, and one of them, Lucia, briefs Manel on the hospital's situation. She explained that the hospital's lower floor was originally a quarantine area, but after the mutated virus outbreak, it was overrun in less than half a day. Now, the area is filled with hordes of zombies. However, Manel noticed a rescue helicopter on the helipad. He remembered Pritchenko mentioning that he had once been a pilot. If they could make it through the horde of zombies to reach the helipad, they might be able to fly the helicopter and escape to the island where his sister was. Manel's plan is to wait a few days for Pritchenko's wound to heal before attempting the escape. But plans always change. Because the gang of pirates from the fishing boat had shown up here, they were forced to act immediately and slip out through the hospital's back door. On the way, a nurse is bitten by a zombie. As they passed through a corridor, a young girl suddenly froze, staring at a zombie in the distance. She had recognized it as her mother and couldn't stop herself from calling out. Manel took the girl and ducked into a storage cabinet to hide. The zombies surrounded them and kept attacking. Suddenly, the rapid bursts of a machine gun rang out, killing all the zombies. Through the bullet hole, Manel realized it was the pirates who had killed the zombies with their machine guns. Fortunately, the pirates didn't notice them hiding in the locker. Outside the utility room, there were many zombies wandering around. Remembering a video he once saw of people using shopping carts to shield against zombies, Manel builds a mobile fort of pushcarts, enclosing the children inside it. They cautiously push their makeshift fortress forward, inching their way toward the helipad. But then disaster strikes. A wheel hits something on the floor, making a loud noise that draws a swarm of zombies in their direction. The three adults hold their ground, each fending off zombies from one side as they press forward with the children in tow. Before long, they finally reached the helipad, but just as Pritchenko was about to start the helicopter, Ushakov and his men intercepted them. Seeing this, Manel quickly hacked through the lock on the door behind him, releasing the zombies, who immediately charged at Ushakov and his men. Manel's tactic was a success. The zombies quickly killed Ushakov and his men. With only a few zombies left, Manel took down the remaining ones and climbed up the helicopter ladder. The group takes off, flying toward the Canary Islands, which they've heard is now Spain's largest survivor stronghold. As they near the islands, Manel's phone finally picks up a signal. He calls his sister, Bolin, to let her know they're almost there, but Bolin's voice on the other end is filled with panic.
Manel, no vengas a Canarias! Da la vuelta, no vengas! Por favor, no vengas!
After the signal was cut off, they looked at each other in disbelief. At that moment, two bombers flew overhead, heading directly toward the Canary Islands where Manel's sister was.